really what it is white supremacy being regurgitated into the Black community, and it's a psyop.
Thank you.
And we've been in the military, we understand how psyops works. This is a psyop. A lot of these folks that we've dug into, that especially are the bigger content creators that have um pushed this FBA kind of stuff, your Teeds and
Yeah.
or all
I
them
try
folks.
not. I try not.
I'm
I'm gonna
sorry.
blurt that out. I try not to say his name on this damn channel because I don't want him to get one more click. But you're exactly correct. That's the picture that goes up whenever I talk about this, and I say the same thing. The psyop is real. What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here. And this one's going to be special. Anybody who's been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know there's two things that really, really matter to me. Number one, it's veterans issues. Number two, it's the saving of this democracy. You may not know the third, though. The third, I have had on here a few people from the native tribes to native activists, people who have been outside of tribes and have been let in because of their activism, as well as every so often I get the privilege of actually someone who is of native descent themselves. Well, this time I have someone who I think not only fills all of the categories and not only will help us broaden our knowledge of Native American politics, the understanding of the diaspora. Number one, the history of the Native American people, the history of the people who were first here is the history of this place that we belong to. And the fact that we don't know it enough is a travesty. We should all see it as such. Let's be honest, this is not the first place where somebody has came and conquered it, and it's not the first place that they used every tool, the conqueror, that is, used every tool to try to erase the people there. But in all those other places, at some point, the people wisened up, and they start to look at the Aboriginal histories. At some point, the people wisened up, and they realized that the culture that they tried to erase, or that they came this close to erasing, or that fought back hard enough and they just couldn't erase, was also necessary for them to move forward. There were things that they needed to know from the people who lived there first. Except this place. Except this place. We're not the first people to break treaties. We're the first people to not realize our stupidity in doing so, in my assessment. In my assessment. So the person I have here today, I think, is the perfect bridge. Veteran. Honored by me, and the work that she does, and she did while in service. Saving people, helping people, keeping people safe, as well as saving the lives of the people who were held captive. Oh, yeah. We're talking about someone who cares about democracy and who's willing to help fight in any way that she can. And more importantly, it's a very specific kind of democracy that she's fighting for. And that is, I'll let her tell it. Everybody, I'm privileged to have with me today, Melinda, otherwise known as BrownGirlPride on most social media. I know her from TikTok. Melinda, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Excellent. I'm so glad to have you here, and we're only an hour late. That's on purpose. It's on purpose.
We're good.
So I've been telling everybody why you are important here, but there's a few things that I think only you can say, and that is some things that happened in Native American history and the diaspora. Could you give just an overview of what's the tribal Native Americans, the tribes, and then the non-tribes Native American, in the best way, because I'm not qualified to talk about it, and I may even be talking about it wrong now. Tell everybody about that aspect of what it is you do.
So There's two distinctions. You have tribal Native Americans, which is what most people think of when they're thinking of Native Americans, those that are still connected to their tribes and to their nations. You know, you'll hear of the Lakota, you know, and the famous, everybody has a Cherokee grandmama. So, you know, and Choctaw and so forth. But, you know, I mean, there were thousands of tribes here prior to colonization. Currently, about 500, I think, in 35 tribes, 535 tribes, I think, that are currently federally recognized. So those would be your tribal indigenous peoples here in the United States. And then you got your detribalized people, which are folks like me and most brown Latinos, and those that were adopted out of families or tribes or things like that due to various colonial reasons, right? Displacement, colonial borders being created, all the things that we understand colonization to be. So, um, detribalized indigenous people are people who have strong ties to their indigenous ancestry here. And we also still have a lot of our culture that is passed down, that was preserved, but it's not like the direct tribal culture anymore. It's been kind of homogenized into those bigger groups like Mexican culture, Puerto Rican culture, all these different groups within Latin America and so forth. Um, so that's kind of the big difference. And in reality, most people are detribalized people, including Black Americans as well, because at one point, before the transatlantic slave trade happened, you guys were part of tribes as well. And when kidnapped and brought over to our lands by the Europeans, it caused detribalization, so a displacement and a removal of culture and things like that. But there were things that y'all preserved just as much too, to kind of keep that African culture still embedded within in yourselves as well. So that's kind of like the difference between the tribal and the detribalized Native Americans here in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow, just hearing it told like that uh, brought something to my face, brought a smile to my face and something to my heart. Like, you know what? We're part of it. We're part of a tribe that were detribalized when we were brought here.
Mhm.
Um, and that connection, I mean, literally, right then when you said it, there was something that I can't force or suppress that I felt, feeling that yeah, I do belong to an actual tribe somewhere, and that's something that we've been cut off from as Black Americans, especially. The reason why you take somebody from another land and bring them over here to be a slave is because, quite frankly, when you try to enslave Native Americans, they know the land too well. They know they may have friendships too much. They know they can escape and they can survive. You bring someone here who has no idea of the language, of the people, of the land itself, and you have a better chance of um, keeping them under wraps.
Well, and that's part of it. So with indigenous people and slavery, what happened was instead of enslaving them within their own territorial regions, they would often do the same thing. They would move them around into different areas. So they would take natives from the northeastern side of the United States, or what is now the United States, and they would bring them down into the Caribbean. You would see Caribbean natives taken into Mexico. You would
Mm,
see indigenous natives from the Mexico region brought up into like Canada, or you know, they move you around the hemisphere. But also they also took us to Europe and European colonies in Africa. It wasn't the transatlantic slave trade. There was more Africans that were brought over than indigenous people that were sent over in the opposite direction, but it did happen in both directions. And
wow.
so um, it's the little parts of those histories where we talk about indigenous history being kind of suppressed or erased that they don't talk about. And then when we don't hear these things, then we end up like the oppression Olympics start coming into play. People
Mm-hmm.
start saying, well, my people went through this and your people didn't go through that. And it's like, hold up. We're all fighting the same enemy. We're all going through the same colonization. They're doing the same things. They're just doing it at different time periods. They're doing it in little different ways. You know, they may be changing up how they're doing it here and there, but the impact is still the same across the board. You know, they may call it something different in order to confuse people or to get away from what was illegal slavery for indigenous people. It was outlawed, but that didn't mean they didn't stop enslaving indigenous people, just like they didn't stop enslaving black folks when they outlawed, you know,
Facts.
yeah, when they outlawed slavery for black folks. So, they just call it something different. They reframe it, and that's what and we still live with legal slavery today via the 13th Amendment. So there's
Facts.
8 states, did you know? 8 states that have removed the exemption clause from their state amendments. So there are only 8 states in the United States that are completely have completely abolished slavery. There's no exception
No.
clause.
No, I did not know.
Only
What
eight
states are
states.
those? Do you know them offhand?
Colorado is one of them. Maine is another one. I can't. I think.
Hey, black folks, take heed.
I can't remember all of them off the top of the bat, but yes, eight states. Colorado and Maine, I know for sure are one of them. Are those?
You need to know these 8 states, and we probably need to get there quickly. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, you good. You
I'm,
good.
I'm gonna cut that out. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal.
Good.
Before I get into, well, you know what? You just brought this up, so I'm gonna go with it. What do you think about the FBA bullshit? This ridiculousness. I don't know if you know about it. It's maybe
Oh yeah.
only people in the black uh in the black communities here, African American culture here, don't understand. This is the foundational black Americans who have went from one xenophobic lie to another, and hating on other Africans, and now have come to say that they are native here, there were black people here, and they're not African. Uh, Go. If you've heard anything about it, you can talk about it. If
Oh
not,
yeah.
I'm moving
I
on.
have.
I can't explain the whole fucking bullshit.
I have. Really, what it is white supremacy being regurgitated into the black community, and it's a psyop.
Thank you.
And we've been in the military. We understand how psyops works. This is a psyop. A lot of these folks that we've dug into, that especially are the bigger content creators that have um, pushed this FBA kind of stuff. Your Teeds and
True. Yeah.
or all them folks.
I try not.
I'm
I'm gonna
sorry.
blurt that out. I try not to say his name on this damn channel because I don't want him to get one more click. But you're exactly correct. That's the picture that goes up whenever I talk about this, and I say the same thing. The psyop is real. Go ahead.
Exactly, and that's what it is. It's these bigger creators that push this kind of pseudo history and stuff. They're getting paid for it. A lot of people that people have looked into, especially the ones like on TikTok where I see it happening all the time, most of them weren't pushing this crap before COVID. When COVID happened and everybody was religiously online, it, I mean, there was some pockets here and there, but it like blew up during COVID online, and that's
Uh huh.
when, because it was able to spread like crazy through the use of social media. So this is why you're seeing it happening now. And I would notice, because I would debunk a lot of it at one point in my social media time. And one thing I noticed, there's a lot of bots and a
Yeah.
lot
Then
of
you
the
realize.
other folks. Yeah, and a lot of these other folks that are pushing it, like making content and pushing it. Most of them, like I said, weren't thinking this way before. Um, have been either A, brainwashed and delusional, or B, they're getting paid kickbacks from other people. Some of them are using it as a way to scam as well. I could do your genealogy. I can prove to you that your family
Oh.
is Cherokee and Choctaw and all this other stuff. And then you got some vulnerable black person who is like desperate to be like understand who they are and where they're from, because we talked about the detribalization, right? And then they're paying 75, $150, whatever it is, to find that one native ancestor, and it's not being done by professionals. It's scamming people, and people just taking shit off of ancestry.com and plugging in things that they want to plug in. So it kind of, this is It's old. It's literally the Moorish kind of ideology, the sovereign citizen. That didn't start with black folks. It started with white people. They
Of
started that
course.
shit. The we're the originals here. That shit started with Europeans back when we had Kennewick men, and they thought that these ancient bones were European, and found out that they weren't. So these are things that have been, and when they like did the facial reconstructed, you'll see the same things, the same talking points that now certain black people will say about Luisa from South America. Oh, they when they do these reconstructions, they're just assuming what they look like. So you get these people with biases and do computer reconstructions, and they're applying skin tone, they're applying all these things based off of their own assumptions and their own imagination. It's not based off of any actual evidence. So they made Kennewick man look white, they made Luisa look black, and so from here on out, that's how everybody sees it, and that's not how it was ever what they were. So you're getting that kind of the pseudo stuff that's being kind of revamped that white people used to talk about. Well, we were here before Columbus, kind of, sort of, like one small group, one small
Yeah.
tiny group,
Yeah.
up in the far northeast of Canada. Like
More
we don't really
importantly,
count it, you know.
more
So,
importantly, I'm sure that I could find a single person from just about anywhere who was crazy enough to find a fucking boat, or happen to bring more than one person across the ice continent somewhere a long time ago, that you're gonna find, because we are still all connected humans. But if this is what if this is
exactly.
what you're basing your history on and your connectedness, it's a very thin thread. Don't be
It is.
stupid.
And at the end of the day, like it
It's being used
also is
against you.
not just indigenous erasure, but it's that of African erasure at the end of the day too.
Yes.
It's erasing that history, that pain, those struggles, and not even just the bad things that happen, but like Black history doesn't start with slavery. It goes
Facts.
before that. You know what I mean? So, and
The
understanding those beautiful cultures and those histories as well is important.
people, since she said the name, you guys will never hear it again on this channel. But since she said the name, allow me to let you know this. This is the guy. This is the guy now who said that he didn't believe that he thinks that the African people they hate us, black folks, right? He believes that we are not African. We don't come from there. He believes that he made up a word called tether. He made up literally his own racial slur because all of the other ones just weren't enough. Okay? This is the guy who's going to tell you that he is not African before he was getting paid for this, because I also believe exactly what Melinda said, is they're getting paid for this. This is what he had to say.
It's beautiful over there, man. And the brothers and sisters are so open to us vibing with them and connecting with them.
How do they treat you as an American going over there?
Man, they love us over there. There's a myth that Africans don't like African Americans.
Yeah.
That myth comes from African immigrants coming over here and the white supremacists telling them, don't hook up with those black folks now.
Hey.
Because, whenever we talk about injustices, they always tell black people, hey, well, you don't like it, just go back to Africa. But every time we try to hook up, they sabotage it.
Hey.
Go back to Marcus Garvey. When we tried to hook up with Africa with Garvey, the FBI sabotaged that. Specifically, they sent in agents on Garvey. Back in the 70s, the Big New Brzezinski, they put out a paper saying we do not want Africans and African Americans hooking up at all. Because, there were a lot of African revolutions over there in the 60s and 70s, so people were fighting for their independence. Mugabe and all those people getting those white supremacists up out of there. So they didn't want us hooking up with that.
That was Tariq Nasheed. He knows the history. He knows the history all the way from Garvey to now. Says he went there and they treated him perfectly. What happens
And now he calls Garvey a tether, which is crazy.
So if you needed any more proof that if you're looking at him as some sort of a hero or intellectual, you can understand that somebody might be intelligent, but it doesn't make them an intellectual. What he is a grifter. He's a grifter. An intellectual has integrity, and they're called intellectuals because their integrity involves education, learning, academics, and the truth therein. These things are what makes someone an intellectual. Being factual about the history, the math, the science, whatever it is that they're good at. Being smart doesn't mean intellectual. An intellectual implies that you have academic integrity. And he only has the dollar. He is a pimp and you are a hoe. If you're following him, you have been duped by the pimp, and you're on the corner every time you come out and talk to people. You are doing his job and giving him more money. That's what you're doing. I don't want you to be a hoe. I'd rather you not be. But every time you come in my comment section, what you're doing is standing on the corner and proselytizing your pimp. You are a hoe, and I'd rather you not be. So I hope now you realize you can see through the lies, and we'll move on from there. Now, let's get to this. We've been trying to bring forth education, historical education, political education, even cultural, artistic education. We're trying to conserve books that people are banning for no other reason than that we believe in order to, however we start over, we're going to need those books to do so because they give an account of our humanhood, the reason why we fight. Well, there is also an education that I haven't thought of, and it is one that's rooted in Native American politics, history, who their people, forefathers are, who were their heroes, what did they do? What did they do before we got here, right? And Melinda, your understanding, your knowledge of things like this is just absolutely amazing. It's just cool to understand that there is a lot about the way Native American people have constructed their societies or their politics that we never even thought of. Let me show this video first.
What is Indigenous governance? Well, it's not a theory to be read in a book. It's a way of life to be practiced. Now, I will give you guys some books to read at the end of this that dive into how different Indigenous societies functioned, and also some Indigenous scholars who critique Western leftism through Indigenous framework. Now, Indigenous governance is not universal. However, Indigenous principles are. And you can find these principles not only here with the Western Hemisphere, but also throughout the Pacific Islands, Australia, New Zealand, Africa, and so forth. It is relationship to the land. Therefore, your culture, your governance, your responsibility is tied directly to your land. And that's going to differ across regions, across continents. It would also depend on how large tribes were, if they were smaller nomadic tribes versus larger cities with millions of people in them. But the foundation always comes back to the land. We had laws, we had authority, but we followed natural law. And natural law doesn't give you punishment, it gives you consequences. An example of Indigenous law from natural law would be if you overhunt, you will eventually starve. So a law would be you can only hunt X amount of buffalo per season. Your consequence for hunting more than you should would be starving, not having enough food, throwing off balance, having to migrate. By the way, this is also how they raise children, was through natural consequence, not punishment. Our children follow natural law, not mom and dad's rules. So everybody was bound to the same natural laws.
Okay. First, let's talk about the law versus punishment. Next, we're going to get into the governance, not the governance. They're going to get into the philosophy more of actual political systems. explain a little bit more of that idea of what we're doing with our ideas of punishment and how it could how would it look more like a natural law in action if we were to start to impose some of these ideas or start to implement some of these ideas.
So when you're punishing, you're not actually allowing for people to hold themselves accountable, right? And they're not going to hold themselves accountable. Um, it's a lot of this psychological kind of like semantics that they do, where it's like, all right, you did something wrong, so hold yourself accountable. And as a society, we're going to hold you accountable. And the way we do that is by punishment. That doesn't teach a lesson. This is why recidivism rates are so high within jails, prisons, and so forth, because it's not about actually holding anybody accountable. It's about punishment to keep people enslaved. That's what that is. It's nothing more than that. And so when it came to like indigenous principles, you would deal with more of consequences versus punishment. What is a natural consequence to the thing that you did? How does that affect um for example, because again, we're not talking about utopiast type societies, idealistic societies. These are societies that function. People were people. There were still bad things. People were bad people existed then too in those societies. So let's say somebody had committed interpersonal violence against somebody else, right? They went up, got into a fight, did something. Now, part of that is not going into punishment, but what's the natural consequence of harming somebody else, physically harming somebody else? Well, the natural consequence is that now the rest of the community doesn't trust you. Now the rest of the community is going to have a fear of you. So now you're no longer part of the community until you come back and take accountability for your actions and also prove through your actions how you are going to rectify that and rebuild relationships to the people you've harmed, rebuild trust within the community. And the whole community is part of the restorative justice, not just the victim and the perpetrator, right? Because we're addressing all those needs. So this is how you don't build fear up in communities and then use that fear to control, because now the person that harmed is being held accountable by the entire community and they have to hold themselves accountable as well. And until they do, they're not welcome back in. So it's a natural consequence to the fear that that person instilled by creating harm. Outside of punishment, if I punish you, well, that doesn't mean that you're holding yourself accountable. That means it doesn't mean you're going to have remorse. Doesn't mean you have to build a relationship back with the person you harmed or the people or the community that you harmed. Doesn't mean you have to do anything. Some people will say, well, F it, I'll go ahead and take my punishment. I'll do my quick time and I'll keep it fucking moving and never take accountability. That's not justice. Right. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the difference. And that's how they've brainwashed people into thinking what justice is. And the justice that we live under has never been actual justice. It's always just been punishment.
There is a restorative justice movement going on. When I was heading the NAACP Atlanta chapter, we had on some people who were a part of the restorative justice movement, and they would actually go in and advocate with criminals and for criminals, along with the people who were perpetrated against, right?
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution for what they would consider as restorative. How could this person gain trust back with the community besides going to prison? What would it take to see this kind of a natural law be made whole or made into balance rather than just a punishment? And I'm not sure how far they've gotten, but I'm not even sure how we have a system that can still be used in such a way, and if it's even possible. In your assessment, is it even possible to get to a place like that with the ingrained system that we have? I applaud those people who were trying and that whole society. I'm just not sure how far they're going to get.
I mean, anything's possible. You would have thought it would be impossible for us to be where we're at right now, because people back then would have been like, how do you disconnect from the land? How do you not treat the land as a relative? What do you mean you put people in jails? What is that? Because we weren't the only societies that didn't have jails. Think about it. Those are colonial things, right? African tribes, Asian tribes, many of these tribes that were still practicing their indigenous ways didn't have jails, had no need for them, because it
Hmm.
was collective restorative justice, right? Jails came in, and now we've been conditioned into punishment and jail systems and this, that, and the third. So it's a matter of educating folks, one, starting off small, starting within your communities, getting people to understand what these things mean, and then showing them a new way of doing it. Once people, it's reciprocity. Once you have something that, if you have a system that isn't working and you bring in a system that's similar to the other one, people aren't going to change. They're not gonna,
Hmm.
they're like, why am I gonna go to that system? It's the same thing. But if you bring them in a system that's completely different and that they can see, is like they can envision themselves in it and say, I think I'd be much happier in this way, then you can get people to change. So you build the foundation in your local communities, within the local organizations. You create that indigenous governance type of system within those local areas that then spreads out into other communities, and then that spreads out into the larger populations, into larger groups, and it dismantles, it actually breaks the foundation of white supremacy and reestablishes a new foundation of indigenous governance, which, as I've said to everybody, everybody's indigenous to somewhere. You had ancestors pre-colonialism that practiced these indigenous principles, whether it be Africa, Asia, even in Europe. They had these indigenous principles that they also abided by. So it's not just going back to Western Hemisphere indigenous people roots. It's going back to those long held global universal principles that we all had as people through our indigenous roots.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Let's go into this more. Let's go into the more philosophical stuff here.
Linear, rigid structure. Nature will always tell you what you need to know if you just pay attention to it. Nature is there to guide you if you stay connected to it. All throughout nature, you will find hierarchies, but they're cyclical. For example, a wolf pack. The mother and the father of the wolf pack are there to protect and to guide. And when they become too old or fragile due to injury or illness, they relinquish their authority to the next. It's usually to the one in the pack that has earned that authority. You see it with whale pods and elephant herds, led by the matriarchs. And when it's time for the matriarchs to go off and transition and die, they will leave their pod or their herd, allowing for the next generation to move up. You see it with beehives and ant colonies where they have queens, soldiers, and workers, but they all work together in the hive, and those positions can be switched. The soldiers can then turn around and become the workers, and vice versa. They will also nurture a new queen when that time comes. So it's constantly revolving. Authority is always earned. We even see this between predators and prey. If there's too many prey, the predators will come in and balance it out. But if the predators do too much, then the predators will eventually slow down and start to diminish in size as well. Hierarchy is supposed to maintain balance and distribute power evenly, not hoard all the power in one spot. Now apply those concepts to how humans should be living. And that's how indigenous people figured out how to live reciprocally with the land, how to hold responsibility to the land and to the people, how to maintain balance through wisdom, knowledge, experience. Roles can be switched at any time. Roles are earned, but they're also removable. If it's not beneficial to the entire pack, if it's not beneficial to the entire herd, if it's not beneficial to the entire colony, then the authority gets replaced. This ensures that authority doesn't last forever. This also allows for leadership to be groomed and guided, wisdom and knowledge passed down. Nature is the greatest teacher. You just have to learn to be a good student. Get off your phones and go connect. Because all the answers that you are ever looking for, you'll find right in front of your face if you just learn how to look for it.
Outstanding. Outstanding. We were talking before, the idea of this cyclical hierarchy was also something that was practiced for tribe to tribe to tribe to tribe to tribe. And their version of democracy, right, is also the same one that I think our Constitution tried to follow. Is this correct? Is
Yeah,
there?
but there's some distinct differences in how the United States um appropriated, I would say, because
Okay.
they took out the important parts that should have
Mm,
been left in. So they modeled the Constitution off the Haudenosaunee Great Law of Peace. Um, and the big differences in that is that in the Haudenosaunee's Great Law of Peace, they they place their checks and balances within the law, within that law, right? The United States, what they did was they removed the checks and balances from the Constitution and placed it outside of the law. That's where we have the issues of corruption and so forth and so on, right? The other thing that they removed was they removed the clan mother system,
mm,
which was the main checks and balance within the Haudenosaunee system. So every nation, it was five nations, tribes, had their own leadership. They functioned in their own ways. They did their own things. But when it came to the collective of the lands that they were on, the decisions that need to be made for in the lands, they all came together. The leaders of all of those came together and came to a council. They would decide, they would debate, they would talk, they would do all the things. And then once the council decided, hey, this is where it is, they would take it to the clan mothers. The
mm,
clan mothers would have final decision. The clan mothers would trust that you guys did everything, that everybody did what was important and appropriate and so forth. And if they say, hey, that sounds a little bit unfair. What are you guys going to do about that? How are you guys going to address that? Then they would take that back from the clan mothers, go back to the council and say, hey, this is where the clan mothers are saying that this is what we need to address. And it seems unbalanced. It seems unfair. And they would then go back to their tribes, talk to their people and come up until everybody was collectively on the same way. So
mm.
that's how it should have worked in the United States. But they didn't do it that way. They removed checks and balances. They removed the matriarch. They removed the clan mother systems. So, cyclical hierarchy is also in the United States. What we did, or what colonialism did, was they tied position to power and to position. So, I mean, they tied power and authority to position and title there.
Mm,
So instead of tying power and authority to accountability and responsibility, now this is a position that you aim for, that you
wow.
campaign for, that you don't earn, that you're trying to gain, right? Because now your power is tied to the position. Now your power is tied to the title. You remove that, now my power is only tied to the land. It's tied to the responsibility to the land. And the clan mothers had every right to turn around and pull you, say, hey, you're not taking responsibility like you're supposed to. You're not holding yourself accountable when you mess up. So you're gone. Bye.
Mm,
Someone else is coming in and taking your place, that the community sees fit to hold that responsibility better than you. And also, power and authority was seasonal and situational. So you may have people in charge and in leadership positions in during agricultural months where they're dealing with the food and they're in charge of those things. And then, come down into the springtime when they're redoing, so seasonal could be how they're handling the food storage system in the winter, how they're dealing with hunting season in the spring. Like, all of these things are going to be held in different leadership positions based on those seasons and what they were doing. You can even fast forward that to modern day era where you have leadership positions in different areas that are responsible for into society. Yeah, education, like the things that we already have things broken out, defense, right? These things are important, and you have leadership in those areas, and that's some of what the United States did. But they made it so that way all these people hold power at all times of the year, at
mm,
all times, right? So like your military generals, right, we know this, they still hold power
mm-hmm,
in peacetime, right? They still hold a certain type of power. They still hold. We're over here still functioning as a military during peacetime. We're doing all of those things. But in indigenous governance, you're working in a regular community during peacetime.
mm.
You may come
Wow.
together here and
That's
now and
big.
then. Yeah, you're not in charge. You're not a general during
Only when it's
peacetime.
time of war, when that
Yeah.
happens, then you
Yeah.
come through. Wow. Okay, so listen. So here's the thing I've been holding back. There's a lot more, obviously, and I've just kind of tried to pick things quickly, YouTube. But the idea is we are not done with this. This wonderful woman here is going to be helping us develop a curriculum that will help teach you out there some of the principles that you may need in your community, as we are the hub of the resistance, as well as what I call the Reconstruction era, because after this, I promise you, we are going to need one. And if we're not prepared for our Reconstruction, it's going to turn out like the last one was. We're going to end up putting the worst people in, and those same people who were hungry for white supremacy and crying now will stop crying and go for the fish that's dangled in front of them again when power is there, unless we have a better option. This channel will be giving you monthly, weekly, I'm not sure yet, bi-weekly, how we're doing it. We're working on it together. Classes taught on new political philosophies, on new communal philosophies, on new ways of thinking about hierarchy, on new ways of implementing it, and just history for history's sake, because it's important that we have reference when we're coming up with new things. And it will be taught and handled by Melinda. And I'm so glad that you have offered to at least give us this. And I know it's a lot, you're doing a lot, but whenever it does come out, understand that this curriculum will be developed by somebody who knows what they're talking about. And if you are a part of Spec Ops, if you've already been admitted and you know who you are out there, then we're also going to be holding even more in-depth classes that you can go out and teach your community and your pods and your people, so that we can make sure that we have a Reconstruction plan ready, because this shit ain't going to last. It's not going to last. You need to know that. I just want to say thank you. You can tell us who you are before we leave. I should have said that first, but we just got started out so easily. Tell us about your military, who you are, and then we'll end with a big thank you for showing up here today.
So, Air Force veteran, served 10 and a half years active duty. I did a couple of years in the Weekend Warrior Club at the reserves. And
Hey, I did that 6 years.
yeah. So, but 10 and a half active duty. Did 2 tours to Iraq, 2003 to Balad, aka Motoritaville, and then 2010 to Baghdad, Area 4 I was part of a special forces unit. I myself didn't participate in special forces, but we were an Air Force logistics unit that came in to help do training and be liaisons with the Iraqi special forces and the American side of things. So we were in there. It was during the quote unquote drawdown that was supposed to happen in 2010, when all of our asses were supposed to leave and didn't.
Right.
So it was an advisory role and so forth. But I learned a lot working with Spec Ops.
Yeah. We
Um,
had a lot of advisors. Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot working with y'all. So if y'all, I'm sure that if you know it, if you in the Spec Op community, I'm sure you know Area 4 in Baghdad. I'm sure you've been heard that at some point in your career with them. But so did that and then got out after my time, and I became a registered nurse. Was ER nurse, psych nurse, and also I now do hospice nursing. So I worked also in um Texas Medicaid, so I understand how that system works too. So I dipped into a lot of different places within these systems, and learned and dissected and researched how they function and how they affect people in general, and where we should be focusing our resistance and our revolutionary tactics, and not kind of going with the old same things that our ancestors did while they were learning and going through it too. We also, the benefit of understanding their history is understanding where they also made mistakes. Our ancestors are not free from critique, and
Mm-hmm.
they would probably even encourage us critiquing what they did and how they did things, so that way we could do better and move forward, and that's what they would want. So they're not free from critique. We should critique what our ancestors did, what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and how we adjust in those ways.
100% agreed. My friend, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking a lot more as you already know, but Political Drain, you need to know that we are fulfilling our charter and making sure that we will be the hub of the resistance and try to help in all aspects of whatever that means. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you coming on, Melinda. And just remember, the time to fight is now.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, man.
Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads, it's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.